welcome. I'm Leann Findley Maxwell with Panther City Partners. Welcome to the podcast this week. We are here this week to speak with Andrea Petty from ADP Coaching. She's going to talk to us a little bit about the transition of young adult kids from high school to college and what that path looks like for a traditional path versus a non-traditional path, and the path that she and her family chose. Remember, we've been talking about transition and life changes, and so I thought it might be nice to have somebody, not just me, on to talk about transitions in their lives. So welcome, Andrea. Thank you so much for being here.
Thanks a lot, Leann. I'm glad to be here.
Thank you. So tell me a little bit about what your kids are doing for college, or what that path looks like for you. Because we've talked about this before. We both do work with college students, and the kinds of kids that we work with, usually our clients, are usually students that are on that traditional trajectory for college. They went to high school, four-year high school, and then they're moving on to college. But your kids have done something a little bit different than that. So can you talk about that a little bit?
Yes, we've chosen quite a different path for ourselves. Yeah. Both my children, one's about to be 18, one's 19. They have both been homeschooled their entire time. They never went to school. And for I'd say from about middle school on, they've been unschooled, where there's no traditional curriculum or sit-down classes or books or things like that. We just let them follow their own interests and provide what they need to do that. And that has worked very, very well.
Okay.
I have my oldest has started community college and will be majoring in math. And my daughter is about to graduate, so to speak. She's at that age where we're officially done with her. And she currently is choosing a path in the fitness industry. So she's about to start certification to be a personal trainer. And she's started an internship at the gym where we work out.
Oh, awesome.
And so we're really excited for her because she's really into fitness and martial arts. And so this seemed like a really good fit for her. So she'll start learning some stuff and making some money. And if it's a good fit for her, then that's great. If not, we'll help her switch gears and do whatever it is she wants to do.
Sure. And so their path versus your path maybe to college, tell me a little bit about that difference.
Way different. I had the very traditional route where, we moved a lot, but I went to high school, then to undergraduate, then a master's degree. That whole route, right straight through, because really, I don't think I really knew what else to do. So I just kept going to school until it ran out, and then I had to do something. So
I know that path.
Yeah. And then here we are.
Okay.
So
So what made you decide that path, the traditional path that you had grown up with, what made you decide that was probably not the right path for your own kids?
That's always an interesting question. And it gets harder and harder because we're so far away from that initial decision that it's sometimes hard to remember why. It really wasn't that my husband or I had bad experiences. It really, that has nothing to do with it. It's not like, oh, I hated school, I don't want to do that to my kids. I don't know. I think we chose a home birth option as well. And so both kids were born at home. And I think that kind of introduced us to an interesting new community of people that were much more independent and self-reliant. And as I got to know people that did that, it really intrigued me to think about what would be different if the kids weren't in an institutional school setting, and what that would open up for them.
Right.
And it was really just kind of an interesting idea to me.
Yeah.
And so, and I wanted the most important thing to be my relationship with my children.
Sure.
And I wanted to have a really good relationship with my children. And I thought that might take more time than I would have with my kids if they were in school 8 hours a day, 5 days a week on that schedule. It's all about school.
Right.
And I thought, well, I really want it to be all about our family.
Yeah.
And our lives and experiences and things like that. And so that was kind of the beginnings, I think. And then we did have some issues with my son, who we thought may have been ADD, but was not. And so we thought, well, definitely we're going to delay. And then as we finally kind of crossed that line and got into it, it's like, no, this is really the way to go. The way to go.
A couple of things that you've said there have stood out to me, in that you wanted to make the focus of your children's upbringing about your family.
Right.
And for you guys, it felt like the best way to do that was to keep them at home with you more, so that you could so that you could have more time with them. It wasn't like you said about school is not a good place.
No,
it was
not at all.
just that
Not at all.
that you wanted to focus on that.
Absolutely.
And the other thing that I feel like is really interesting is talking about that community. And so I'm wondering how that community, that when you started with the home birth and you met this new group of people, how did that community follow you through, or did you stay with that community throughout the unschooling, or did you develop different communities? I'm just wondering how that played a role.
Yeah, well, I guess through that community I met more and more people in the homeschooling community. So in the early years, yes, we had lots of play dates and groups and learning circles and all those sorts of things within our homeschooling community.
Okay.
And it was tricky for us because we're not homeschooling for religious reasons, which is a big motivator for a lot of people. And that's great.
Sure.
But that really wasn't our main focus. So finding kind of opportunities for more secular activities was a challenge, but we did, and we had a group, and that was great. And in the younger years, as the kids got older and had friends and more interests, our activities and their outlets were more directed towards their interests.
Right. Okay. So I'm wondering how that that non-traditional path that your kids have started on helped propel them to their non-traditional paths for their young adulthood, for college, for your older son, and then for not college for your daughter.
Right. Well, I don't know, because it's hard to say, if their non-traditional experiences played a role, or if this was their natural personality.
Sure.
I don't know. They seem to have a good rapport with lots of ages of people, and I kind of attribute that to homeschooling. They work well with adults and kids. They have good leadership skills. And I think that's given them more confidence to just go out and do whatever it is they want to do.
Sure, they're risk takers.
Sure, yeah. And my son has always been very, bookish and in his head. So college was a natural fit. And to pursue something like mathematics, like pure mathematics, there's really no other place to do that.
Sure.
I mean, he does it on his own. Like, he's never really had any formal math classes, but there's not really another outlet for that.
Yeah,
so I see him
sense.
probably just finishing that and then teaching math, because that is his hyper focus is math.
Right.
And Chloe is just a people person and really out there. And so I think homeschooling and all the various experiences really gave her a lot of confidence to just kind of skip the college path if that was the case, and not be so scared of that there's time. There's plenty of time. So go do this thing. If that's not what you want, then college not going anywhere.
Exactly. It will be there.
It'll be there. It'll be fine. And so I think that, if nothing else, is just like the courage to just go do something.
So she definitely has a lot of courage. I'm wondering how that fearlessness plays out for you, because it takes a certain amount of courage for the parent to be able to let go of what the traditional route is, especially when you grew up with that traditional route, because there's a lot of different pressures from family, from friends, from just random strangers who think that that's weird that you've chosen that path. So how does that feel as an adult?
I would say that at this point, this transition, this is the hardest.
Really?
You had a little bit of that in kindergarten, when you're like, okay, they're not going to school, but as soon as people see that they can read and write and do all the things that they're supposed to do, then they calm down a little bit. But then this transition is probably the absolute hardest.
Really?
For all of us.
Okay.
Because, Chloe's really struggling with the constant questions about where are you going to college, where are you going to college, and to say I'm not. And to not have that interpreted as failure. Right. Like, I've chosen not to start college, but you're not a failure.
Right. It's a choice.
It's a choice. Yeah, absolutely. And that there's so many routes to success that don't involve college or involve it later or just partially, or, I mean, there's so, just to open yourself to the options. But as a parent of kids who are making their own decisions, and that when we say we're okay with your decisions, we're okay with your decisions. Right. It's not us saying, well, we're okay with that. It's
but not really.
Yeah, but you got to be like, you got to be okay with it. And so that's hard. Just like letting go of your little fantasies about what your kids are going to be, or trying to live vicariously through them, and just to try to step back and enjoy the ride, enjoy watching what they do and really believing that it's going to be okay. It's going to be all right.
Yeah.
If these are the kids that you raised, then you have to trust that they're going to make good decisions.
You have to trust what you did.
Right. It's like, this would be a horrible time to be like, what did I do? Right. And so, parents get a lot of pressure from other parents.
Sure.
Because we measure each other by how well our kids are doing in college. And
I mean, that's what you talk about at a certain age. That's what all the moms are talking about and all the dads. Where's your kid going to school? What's their GPA?
It's just as much pressure on the parents as the kids. And I think part of it's a lack of imagination.
Sure.
Of envisioning the other outcomes, and also scared that you're going to do the wrong thing.
Right.
Or people are going to think you're weird or think your kid's a failure because they're not doing.
They're not going to get this certain job to make this certain amount of money because you have an expectation as a parent that
this is the way you do it.
Right. And that there's only, like you said, the lack of imagination. There's only one path to get there.
Yeah. And so it's stressful because you don't want to show that to your kids.
Right.
That you're worried or that you're a little anxious or you're feeling a little peer pressure from the other parents because your kid's going to Yale or, whatever. And even though
sure,
that that's no guarantee.
So what are some things that you do maybe internally or you and your spouse do together to help yourselves get over some of that fear or to let go of some of that peer pressure?
That's hard. I talk to other people. I keep, I don't let that on to my kids.
Right. Sure.
You want to have complete confidence in whatever they're doing. That's what's very important. And I do. I guess, like, I don't mean it to sound like I don't.
No, you're not faking that. Yeah.
I totally know my kids are going to be great. But I don't know. I don't feel it quite as much now, but we talk to each other. We talk to other people. Try to talk to people who have kids that have done it this way and are successful. Like, remind ourselves that we weren't the first people to ever do this.
Right. So
we're some of the first people to do it this way, but not the first people to do it this way. And so there's lots of very successful kids that, and reminding ourselves that even people like Bill Gates never finished college. I mean, it's just, just really trusting it's going to be okay.
Right.
Like, I'll feel myself be a little like, oh my God, what have I done here? And I'll look at my kids and be like, no, they're fine. Right. They're good. This is what it's about. They've done this and this and this and this and this, all these experiences and things. It's good.
So again, going back to community, maybe not the exact same community you had at homeschool, but you're still reaching out to your community and help and relying on them to help you process those emotions so that you don't have to process them with your kids.
Well, sure. And the people around us who've known us for a long time, know that the kids are great, and that they're doing fine.
It doesn't seem odd to the people who are around you. No, it doesn't seem like it's non-traditional. It seems like, of course,
just what we do.
Of course, that's what they're doing because that seems like a natural progression.
This is what we do. But it is. I feel bad for Chloe, especially. Colin at least has the out that I'm like, oh, I'm going to college, and people leave you alone. But what are you gonna do? What do you do? What do you do? And so it's really. This was tough for Colin too.
Yeah,
I must say this year of graduation, because we sent out announcements and we have a party, to mark the end of like, okay,
a formal transition.
This is you have transitioned. All the decisions from here on out are you, and we'll support you however we can. And so this like little lead up, May is just the worst.
Yeah,
because everybody's talking about where are you going to go to college, what are you going to do, and I hate that for kids because you don't have to figure it out when you're 18.
No.
Even the ones going to college don't have it figured out. They're just going to college because that's what you do.
That's what you do
Some
next.
of them do. That's not fair. Some people just know from birth what they're going to do, but not very many 18-year-olds, and that's just so much pressure.
I'm dealing with that. I have a couple of clients who are graduating from college right now. And I just had a meeting with one of them yesterday and his mom. And they're like, we're going to grad school. I'm going to go to law school. And my first question was like, okay, so what do you want to get out of that? Well, was his response. And his mom's response was, well, he's just done so well this last semester. I want him to capitalize on that success and continue to grad school. I said, I get that. But then what is then what is the plan? Well, and it was a process of us talking through what you really want to get out of grad school. And for me, I went to grad school because I wanted to get a teaching certificate and I hadn't gotten one in high school or in college. And then I wanted to get a master's in library science. Especially library science requires a master's degree in order to move forward.
Correct.
But a lot of jobs out there don't require a master's degree. And sometimes you get a master's degree and you feel like, oh, I'm just paying for something that I don't.
Still, yeah.
Yeah, I'm still paying for something that I didn't actually need. But having that conversation is really, you see a lot of fear across the faces of both the parent and the kid, because there was this idea of what it was supposed to be. And also, I think the idea for a kid, you know, they're in school, whether they've been homeschooled or not, their life has been about this idea of education, right? All the way up until 18 and maybe 25 if they're going to school. And now suddenly their life is not about education anymore. Right. And that can be terrifying because they don't know what to do themselves. They're scared. You know, one of my students, she keeps applying for jobs that don't even require a college degree. And I'm like, why do you keep selling yourself short? You have marketable skills. But she just doesn't feel like she has marketable skills.
And
she
I think,
feels, you know, timid still.
That's a big part of it. And I think that's a big motivator for us when we were homeschooling was the soft skills, you know, or whatever, you know, the
emotional IQ and in communication.
Right. Yeah, being prepared for life and not focusing all of our attention like all roads lead to college and then what? Because I see a lot in my practice, I see a lot of kids. It's like they get there, they've won the prize, they have the acceptance letter, they're here. I don't know what to do.
Right.
And they fall apart. And so I really wanted to reframe how we viewed life up until, you know, adulthood. That that it's the experiences that are important, that college is great. You know, what's the takeaway? And it's not that you get a job. It's like, what did I learn here? What did I do here? How did I fail? How did I succeed? And so trying to emphasize that no matter what path you take, the important thing is to focus on what you're doing and, you know, why is this important? What did I learn from this? How can I get better? 1% every day, you know, that whole thing of just constantly focusing on your experiences are what are the most important thing. That, you know, you're going to go to college only 4 years of your life.
Right. It's the shortest. I mean, it's the shortest amount of time you spend in school.
In this little period. Yeah. And it, you know, so many of us will tell you, I don't work in what I got my degree in. And when, you know, they obsess about their GPA. I told a kid the other day, I'm going to let you in on this. The second you walk out this door, nobody cares what your GPA is.
Not at all.
And they thought I had just revealed something to them. Right. This secret that, oh my God. I'm like, seriously, when you go in for a job, they're not going to say, what was your GPA?
Not once has anyone ever asked me that question.
Nobody has ever asked me what my GPA is. And they just, like, I don't understand how to look at the world any other way.
Right. What do you mean? Like, what do you mean? This isn't the most important thing in the world.
Right. It's like once you got the degree in hand, you know, and to see something like college is just one tool of many to get where you want. The important thing is knowing where you want to go. Right. Figuring out what you want to do. And if college will help you get there, then college is useful to you. If you can get there without it and you're not interested, then it's not useful to you. And there's no reason to go do something just because that's what everybody does. Right. Right. And that making sure my children understand that that's okay. Right. And that it's what's important is that you're getting up and you're doing something every day. That you're going out there and you're doing something.
Right. And I'm thinking about Chloe, you know, in the fitness avenue that she's taking. You know, right now, college is not the right thing, but later, if she decides that it is, when you said it's still there, I think about what a better student I was after I had been out of college and worked for several years. And when I went back to college to grad school, I was a completely different student. And so I think about that with my own kids. They're much younger than yours, but my husband and I are already talking about a gap year.
Yeah, about delaying
college. I mean, college I still think will probably be the path that my kids choose. But trying to get them to, you know, putting that, you know, little seed right now, like, what are you going to do during your gap year? Are you going to go live with Tio and Tia in Honduras? Or are you going to go volunteer? Or are you going to go do this? So that they can become better. I just feel like when you spend a little bit of time away from school, it helps you become so much better at school. So what do you think about that when you see that in your practice, or if you see that with Chloe, or even with Colin?
Sure.
Taking a little time away can be helpful.
I think it's extremely helpful because, like I said, college doesn't do you any good unless you know what you want to do. And that's we put the cart before the horse sometimes. We stick them in college, and that's where they figure out what they want to do. Right. What's wrong with taking a year or two off to figure out what you want to do and know which degree which classes, what things are going to be useful to you in your future life, rather than it's just a place to go.
Right.
Just to, because I don't know what to do.
Right.
Right. So I'm a big proponent of gap years, you know, if that's the case, as long as you're just out doing something.
Sure. Sure.
You know, we're lucky.
Yeah.
You know, that's kind of a first world thing.
Right.
To be like, oh, just go do stuff. But,
right.
But we are, you know, we're lucky. So just, you know, go do.
And gain those experiences.
Sure, because you'll find out what you don't want to do.
Right, and that's what I always say too. Is like knowing what you don't want to do is just as
helpful,
important,
yes.
if not more important, than knowing what you do want to do.
Right.
You know, I think it can be hard sometimes though with the students that we work with, and even sometimes for our own children, because like my husband has worked with the same company since he was in college. You know, he got this job as an internship, and he has worked with the same company doing not exactly the same thing. He's changed and done different things, but he's a civil engineer. And so what he does, I mean, he's been on that same path for 20 years. My kid's mom has not been on one path the whole time. But I think that sometimes the students I work with, they see their parents as, well, my dad's a lawyer or my mom's an accountant.
Absolutely.
And that they left college and they're just, you know, that it's a straight shot after college. And what I try to explain to them is that it's not. It's a winding road, you know, or it's a jungle gym. And sometimes you're up here and sometimes you have to swing over here. But like you said a minute ago, it's those experiences that you gain along the way. Right. Even though I did not climb the career ladder in any sense of that word, every single job along the way I've learned so much from it to help me get to where I am today. So how do you kind of cultivate that in your own kids to help them see that these experiences are valuable, especially when they're feeling that pressure from like, I'm a failure, or people assume I'm a failure because I'm not following that traditional path?
Well, my career path was completely non-traditional. So we have that, you know, whereas their dad has been at the same company for 20 years or so. And before that, you know, he was in the film business, and then he got a job with a company that works in that industry, and then he's been there for forever. So that's one way to do it. Yeah. And college, you know, James went to college, but that didn't really have anything to do.
Oh, really? Okay, so he doesn't have a degree in film.
He has a minor in film, but his major's in German.
Oh,
so yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So he's always worked in the film business ever since. Yeah. You know, through college, all through that, and I think the minor in film was just because he knew some stuff. So like, we'll do that, and so, but that field that he works in, most people don't go to college. Yeah. And
they learn on the job.
Yeah, and that's a huge field. And yeah, even if you go to college, you're not learning anything about being on a film set, or you know.
Right. That's a lot like getting a degree in teaching. Right.
Exactly. It's like, And so both of us kind of have experiences in gig economy and self-employment and long-term employment. So we're able to at least share our experiences. Sure. And that helps with our fear a little bit. Yeah. Because we didn't do it that way. So, and we were okay. That a lot of it just depends on you. Sure. And I tell them, you know, you just got to throw yourself out there. Every job I've ever had, somebody mentioned something and I said, I can do that. Yeah. Even though I have no clue if I can do that. Right. And so, and it worked. Right. So you got to take a few risks. And so we talk about that sometimes you just got to throw yourself in and give it a try. And because that's how I ended up in coaching. It was just a random email from you. And I'm like, yeah, I can do that. Give that a try. I'll give that a try. And now it's like the best thing ever. Yeah. So
it is. It's great.
Then I use those experiences with my kids. I'm like,
right. So I'm wondering how, you know, we talk about taking these risks, and that's a big deal for me too. My kids are starting riding their bikes to school. And so it's scary, but it's also really important for me for them to be able to take those small risks, where I can think about when I tell my clients this, my college clients this, that I took AP Chem 2 in high school, and it was the most terrible class I'd ever taken. But I got a C in that class. And because I got a C in that class, when I got to college, I didn't have this fear surrounding what's going to happen if I don't make an A or a B, because I'd already experienced that failure or that not perfect success. Sure. And so I had a better understanding of what that looked like for me, and to know that I could overcome it. So that when I did get into college, and I did inevitably make C's because I wasn't prepared for some of those classes, I didn't have the same fear and guilt and loathing that I might have had if I hadn't had that experience first. So when you talk about taking these risks with your kids, what does it look like when there's failures?
Well, we talk a lot about that too, that that's an inevitable part of life and taking risks and everything else. It's like, yeah, you're just gonna bomb it, man.
Sure.
It's okay, because you're gonna learn more from that than you are from the successes.
Right.
And even, my son deals a lot with anxiety and OCD, and so college is a little tricky sometimes. And he hit a rough patch where he had to do some work on that, and so his grades were suffering a little bit. He got towards the end and he was really kind of freaking out. And I always jokingly say, man, I give you permission to write the worst paper you have ever written in your entire life, because you know what, it's not going to make that much difference down the road. It's okay.
Yeah.
And he ended up getting all A's and B's, even with his crappy paper that he turned in. But it was just so hard for him to just loosen up a little bit and just, because sometimes you get that paralyzing thing where it's all or nothing, and it's either I'm going to write the perfect paper or I'm not going to turn anything in.
Right.
And I do it with my students all the time. It's like, I give you permission to just throw some words on a paper and turn it in.
Yeah, because you just need to get something in.
Yeah, because a C is better than a 0.
Right. That whole notion of giving yourself permission or giving the clients permission, I feel like that is something big with the college students, because I feel like so many of them have had so much structure in their lives.
Absolutely.
That they don't know how to make those kinds of decisions. It's not that they haven't failed in anywhere. They just haven't been given the opportunity to make those kinds of choices for themselves. And so they do need to get permission from someone.
You have to let them fail.
Right.
Like, you have to. And it's the hardest thing in the world you'll ever have to watch, is watching your kid fall down or fail or do something scary. But you have to remind yourself that if you don't, what are they going to do? I mean, when real failure hits and real crisis happens, and somebody's always picked up the pieces for you, and if it's really scary for you, you can set it up. There's nothing wrong with I know my kid's about to do this thing and I think it's not going to go well, but in this instance, I'm going to step back and I'm going to watch it happen, and I'll be prepared to help them through it, because it's hard for you too.
Sure.
But like you're talking about the kids going off to ride the bikes, you have to step back and recognize that that's your fear.
Right.
That this is where math comes in. Statistically, nothing is going to happen to that kid. That kid is going to be fine.
Right.
And I have to constantly remind myself. It's terrifying sometimes. Like when they get in the car and drive off, they start driving. It's like, okay, they're going to be okay. I have to remind myself that this is my fear, and I do not want to give it to them, because you're going to really hamstring them if you're just burden them with your fears too. And so you're just going to have to find a way, whatever that is, to go with the other moms over here and cry and complain and be fearful, so that you can present this face to your kids that, you got this, you got this. Oh, you failed. I'm really sorry about that. What are you going to do? Yeah. Because that's the only way to learn. Failure is the only way to learn.
Yeah. I feel like that failure, when you have that safety net and you have that support, because you're not saying that you're just hanging them out to dry.
No, absolutely not. I'm right here watching it.
Right. And I'm going to be here when it happens.
Sure.
But that gives them such confidence if they've had that failure, so that later, when there's not as big a safety net or the stakes are so much higher, that they know that they can get themselves through it.
And the thing that I find with kids sometimes that haven't failed a lot, they have a hard time distinguishing between real failure and getting a C on a paper.
Yes.
And so, there's a difference, right? And they have they just boom react to these really small things. And so they don't have a good perspective on failure or stumbling and stuff like that, because the little things have been handled for them sometimes by very well-meaning adults. I don't mean to criticize anybody, because I feel how hard it is to not just get in there and do stuff for your kids. It's hard, but it's practice. You just need to do a little at a time and just keep practicing until it gets easier. Right. To just be like, sorry about that.
You also said something that when you do see your kids with this failure, you ask them, what are you going to do about it? Rather than swooping in and fixing it, which all of us have done. I mean, all parents have done that.
I've done it. Yeah.
Yeah. Taking a step back and asking them, how are you going to fix it, so that they can learn those problem-solving skills.
Yeah. What are you going to do, and how can I help you? Like, I don't mind helping, but you tell me what you need from me. I'm not going to tell you what you need from me.
Yeah. Wow.
So you decide what you want to do and let me know how I can help.
Yeah. That takes a lot of courage too.
It sure does. because you're
As
like,
a mom,
we could get this done in 15 minutes.
I know. Oh,
we just do it this way, but no, we're gonna do it your way.
we're gonna do it your way. We're gonna let you. Oh my gosh, the number of times I've told that
Especially
to my
with young
daughter.
children, like, you know,
oh.
you're not loading the dishwasher right.
If you would just sit down and do your homework rather than complaining
I
about
know,
doing your
I know,
homework,
right?
you would have been done 10 minutes ago.
Exactly.
Awesome. So I just want to kind of wrap up and talk a little bit about the main points that we hit on, that you had a community of people in different communities, but you've had a community of people that you lean on. You
Absolutely, very important.
Yeah,
Yes.
that's very important. And then also having that time where you can kind of talk through your own fears and your own anxieties, but not putting those on your kids.
And you also have to have your own life. You have to be separate from your kids. You know, if you just get too involved in everything to where you just don't have a life,
right?
That's not good for your kids.
Right.
That is not. Because, you know, if I don't have interesting experiences to share with my kids, then I become a really, you know, I'm a very exciting person. I'm a very, you know, great person to be around. So you really have to focus hard on setting some boundaries for yourself and pursuing within reason what you can on your own. Like your own, you have to be self-differentiated from your kids. You have to be you raising these kids, not us, the servant of this process.
That can be so hard. It's so hard to extricate yourself from that enmeshed relationship,
because it requires letting your kids fail, because you are not going to sit there for 6 hours and do their homework.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? It means I'm going to this thing that I got planned. I'm sorry you didn't get that done, and you're going to fail. I offered to help you yesterday.
Right.
Sorry.
Well, I think that that's really important, because not only are you creating your own space for yourself and letting them fail, but you're also modeling for them what you want them to see. You want them to see experiences, and you want them to see parents who are involved in things outside of just their kids, because that's the kind of parent that you're hoping that if they're ever parents, that they might want to be that same type of parent.
Right. Or if they don't want to be parents, all they have is this model of you just being this self-sacrificing, devoted person, which is beautiful. You're a beautiful person, but you're not really showing them what you could be. Right. That there are modeling what it is you're trying to, you know, because that's a huge thing for us. It's like we've got to model what we want our kids to be. I can tell them all day long, but if I'm not doing the things that if I'm not constantly trying to get 1% better, if I'm not constantly learning from my failures, if I'm not constantly learning all the time, you can't expect that from your kid. Right. You can't just go to school and then sit and watch TV all day. I mean, it just doesn't work that way. Yeah. At all.
You can't expect them to be able
Especially
to
if they don't go to school. Right. You know.
I know, because they're sitting there watching you watch TV all day.
Yeah, it's like, you're it. You know?
Wait a minute, Mom.
Yeah, exactly. You got to model that constant, you know, attitude of learning and growing all the time.
Right. Awesome. So thank you for your time today. I really appreciate you chatting with me about this subject, especially this time of year, you know, as we're transitioning into the summer. It can be a hard time of year, whether you're graduating from high school or graduating from college, or even just going from elementary school to middle school. All of those transitions for our kids and our clients are big transitions for them. But I think that one of the things that we've talked about today too is that they're big transitions for parents too. And as parents, we have to know what we want from our kids, and then we have to model that behavior.
You got to cut yourself some slack.
Yes, I think that's
a hard
really
job.
Important. It is a hard job. I remember right after we had our son Walker, Spencer said to me, "If I had known it was going to be this hard," and I was like, "Stop your sentence, because you don't want to finish it. You don't want me to. You don't want to say." He's like, "That's not what I mean. It just no one tells you that part of it. You just think we're going to have this joyous little baby, and it's going to be lovely." And while there are many aspects of it that are lovely, that seems to be what people want to focus on, is the loveliness of being a parent. But in order for all of these parents to feel like we're not alone, this community of, there's drudgery in it too, and that's okay. And it's okay for you to feel that
there's
drudgery.
Stuff to learn there.
And there's a lot of stuff to learn there. There's a lot of stuff to learn
about yourself.
There. Yeah, so that you can be this independent person and model that for your kids. Well, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. So I just want to say thanks, everyone, for listening. I appreciate you spending a bit of your time with us today. Hopefully you've learned something, and hopefully we've given you some things to think about, because really that's what we want to do each time we get together, is give you some things to think about. Again, I'm Leann Maxwell with Panther City Partners. This was Andrea with ADP Coaching. And I'd like to ask you again, if you haven't started, please follow me on Instagram at Panther City Partners. In that, you can shout out some ideas for topics you'd like to hear discussed on the show. You can let me know if you have other transitions or changes in your own life that you think are ripe for opportunity for us to talk about. Thank you so much for your time, and we'll talk to you again soon.